Hi investigators, I am Professor Don Miguel, and with me today is Senorita Casey Pine. How are you, Casey?
I'm fantastic, Mike. How are you?
Very well. We've got a big program today and a lot to get through in our 30 minutes. What are you going to be talking about today, Case?
Today I am going to talk about pivoting when trying to find someone online.
Fantastic. We're looking forward to that. We'll be back after the intro. We've got some big stuff today. Well, it's all happening in workers' compensation this week, people. In Brisbane this week, a manufacturing firm was fined $50,000 because a third-year apprentice using an angle grinder to clean a piece of metal had a kickback from the angle grinder. It went in between his groin, ripped open his scrotum and injured him, which was a rather nasty injury. Before the bruising had even turned yellow and it was repaired, I'm sure he checked it was still working. That's a guarantee that most blokes will give you. Sorry to inform you of that, but that's how it goes. Anyway, he returned to work and he finished his apprenticeship with the workplace, but the magistrate involved in it, hi Renee, how you going? He wasn't having them getting away with it, so a $50,000 fine and a complete review of their workplace health and safety procedures and practices at that workplace. They'd been operating for over 50 years and never had an accident of that magnitude before. So that happened this week in civil investigations as an outcome for WorkSafe in Queensland. Now, it's not limited to Queensland, what we do as private investigators by any means. Down in Tasmania, they are actively promoting in WorkSafe Tasmania machinery equipment guarding and machinery equipment, here we go, machinery equipment being operated in accordance with instructions. So what's that got to do with anything? Well, if you have a piece of machinery down in Tasmania, this is what they reckon at WorkSafe: any rotating shafting, including joints, coupling shaft ends and crankshafts, must be covered by a guard. So that's what they say down there, and they tell you that in Tasmania's WorkSafe authority. Now that's meaningless, it's just words on a page. That doesn't tell an investigator what they're going to be doing or anything about it. So let's have a look at the real world of coupling when you're an investigator. How does it affect the investigation? Let's have a look at a good example. I've got one here somewhere. People say to me there's no such thing as accidents. In this one, a gentleman has the tags, the toggles on his hoodie entangled in the coupling of a piece of machinery. So it's an early morning in Queensland, Western Queensland. It's a chilly 14 degrees and this guy's going to work. Now, he's wearing his hoodie because he's a little bit cold, and he's got to check that coupling that's spinning attached from the tractor to that piece of machinery. Now, the hoodie thing's tangled in that machinery. It took 30 seconds to rip both his arms off. Accident reconstructionists using the same machinery in a wind tunnel tried to reenact that accident. They couldn't do it. No matter how hard they tried, the conditions just didn't match it. So today, in all modern tractor connections and couplings and that sort of thing, the guards have to be in place. So something as simple as that can't happen again. The man is now back at work and he has 2 prosthetic arms. So he's back working on the farm as a farmer, but he has prosthetic, it's a hard word to say on Friday, Casey, arms. So good on him. So that's two examples of people that have recovered. Tasmania got very serious about WorkSafe and their guarding of machinery and that sort of thing. So what's something that's really more, brought along an example for you today that you're going to deal with, because unless you live in Tasmania and you're going on your tractor to school every morning, you won't really become too involved with tractors. But what's something that's relevant to everybody, including investigators? These things. Can't see it.
No.
You see that one, Daisy?
Yeah, you can see that now. Yeah.
What is it?
A pizza box.
Okay, it's a pizza box. And pizza boxes have these amazing holes in them. And that's so the steam can get out and your pizza won't go all soggy before you take it home and guts it, right? Like I did last night with this one to get this example of the pizza. Now, pizza boxes are a real science, believe it or not. They're a masterpiece of design. And scientists, agonised over how to make better pizza boxes for years. And today, really in development, there is a round pizza box in development. Pause for a cup of tea and dramatic effect. So anyway, what do they do with these pizza boxes? How do they make them? And why is that dangerous in regards to guarding? Let's have a look at the video. Lots of videos to look at today. Okay, this is a flexo machine. This is what they make cardboard boxes out of, including pizza boxes. So they stuff cardboard blanks into the machine, give it a big push with that thing, and it goes into the machine and actually prints, cuts, and staples out those little holes. And out the other end come pizza boxes. Now, in this case, you see all the scrap metal, all the scrap cardboard going on the floor. This is just an example. That doesn't happen in reality. It'd be dangerous. This is what actually happens in reality. The flexo machine prints the box. The scrap cardboard goes on the conveyor belt running underneath the factory for up to 200 metres on the other side of the unproductive part of the factory where they have the scrap going. Does that make sense to you? And if you've had enough cones and you're the operator of that machine and you've got a 200 metre underfloor conveyor belt underneath you and you've been operating that for a couple of weeks, that conveyor belt ride becomes irresistible. With no guard on that machinery I just showed you, the young man decided to go for a surf 200 metres along that conveyor belt. Now, it's got grating over the top of it, and it's in a factory, and there's so much noise, it's like being in outer space, no one can hear you scream. So he goes sliding along that conveyor belt, which is heading towards where the scrap cardboard goes, which goes into a metal muncher to munch up all the cardboard so it can be recycled 5 times. And of course, to keep the blood and guts down, it's sprayed with water to keep the dust down as well. So he's hurtling along this conveyor belt, which he elected to go for a ride, laying on his back, scrunched up, trying to stop himself being carried into the masticating machine that's going to chop him into little pieces. Fortunately, someone was walking over the top and heard him screaming. He found a place to hold on as the conveyor belt kept going underneath him. Now, the conveyor belt in this case was made of metal, not rubber. Okay, it's made of metal. So as he held on and the conveyor belt kept going, his back got shredded completely as he screamed. They stopped the machinery, they got him out. He was unable to go back to work for the rest of his life. So when Tasmania Worksafe and WorkSafe Victoria and WorkSafe New South Wales and South Australia talk to you about guarding machinery and don't convey it very well, okay, they should come to me and get some really good stories about this kind of stuff. That's why they're talking about it. They experience these injuries, but they don't want to tell you about the blood and the gore and the guts that results from it, because often they don't know. They've only been in it since they left university for 2 years and have no experience of this sort of thing, but they write a good accident prevention article. So people, as an investigator for work cover, there's 2 examples. One's a coupling with a tractor. One's a ride on a conveyor belt when he was high as balls off his face when he shouldn't have done it, and both those people got serious injuries. One of them, though, went back to work because they were serious about working. Great news this week, people, in civil investigations. All round wonderful person. If I can get it up.
It's up. It was up.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Annette Bury has joined Transport New South Wales. And it's everyone's favourite HR professional. So congratulations, Annette. That's a very senior role. Annette only ever has senior roles, but it was really good to see on LinkedIn this week that she's got that role with Transport New South Wales. And that's going to benefit Transport New South Wales because Annette's the absolute consummate professional. Well done, Annette. Next week, Mike King will be speaking for one of the industry associations about private investigators and the number of private investigators in Australia. So this is really significant because a lot of people do this academically, but they never were a private investigator. Mike is an investigator and has been a licensed private investigator, and I imagine would still be today a licensed private investigator, so he knows what he's talking about. That's happening on Monday of next week, I believe. I'm really looking forward to that one. Well done, Dr. Michael King. I'm looking forward to seeing you speak on that one. So that'd be great. That's great. Yeah, I'll let you know how we go on that. Today I'm going to be talking, or Pat Flynn will be talking about recording conversations. Now, I'm going to show you the video on it, and it's going to be specific to Victoria. If you live anywhere else other than Victoria and you want to watch the full video, because I'm only going to be showing part of it because we're limited to time, excuse me, go to the Australian Security Academy YouTube page, click on videos and scroll down to SpyCurious episode 99. That's the video that comes from. So you'll be able to watch the full video for the 46 minutes about recording conversations there. Now, it's really important. It's not hard to remember. It's episode 99. Okay, people, you got that straight? Really easy. It's not episode M, okay? I want to be clear on that. It's episode 99. Everybody should get that, right? So it's 99. It's not episode FF, all right? It's episode 99. Casey, what episode is it?
Was it episode Moneypenny?
No. Thank you very much, Casey, for spoiling everything. I'm looking for a new Friday afternoon supportive person. Episode 99 down here. And I'll be playing all about recording conversations coming up in a minute. So that's what's happening there. We're going to have to cover quickly a few jobs. Amazon are looking for an investigator in Melbourne, and that's on our Facebook page, people. So if you're looking for a job in investigations, government, corporate, or private, as a licensed private investigator, go to this Facebook page and you'll see job vacancies that have come up this week. So that's a great start, that job. Kerrigan's are looking for investigators down in Melbourne, factual investigators. UWE are looking for investigators on the Sunshine Coast. This is a great one. The Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority in Tamworth, New South Wales, are looking for an investigations officer. 2 of their investigation officers graduated from the Australian Security Academy this week with diplomas in fraud control. So that's just 2 of the people this week of the 6 that graduated from the Academy from Services Australia and the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority with a diploma of fraud control. So congratulations to all those people. You worked very hard to get that. MJM are looking for general insurance video people for interviewing. So they are just some of the vacancies that are available this week. Casey, what have you got for us today?
I thought I'd talk about pivoting. I know I've spoken about it before, but we often have new people coming in and watching the show, and sometimes you can never hear something too many times. So I had a new investigator who is trying to do desktop investigations contact me this week moaning about paid databases and how they'd paid for a paid database and they were quite disappointed. I'm not saying which one it is because we have some really good ones in Australia. And I just let them know that a paid database is not the be all and end all. If a paid database could do your job as an investigator and find a person, then you wouldn't have the job. It's a pivot point. So for the fans out there, you have to just remember that it's purely and simply a pivot point. It is there to get you some more information, whether that's court records or who you lived or who the person lived with, who their neighbors were. There's so much information there that are just little tidbits that it's not the person. There's no big sign saying the person is here. Sometimes there is, and it's fantastic, but sometimes they're not, and you just have to look for those pivot points. So when it comes to pivot points, always, I mention this to the new investigator, take notes about what you do. So if you do something, try and make sure that it's something that you can do again. So what I use, I haven't screenshotted mine because I didn't even think about doing this until later, but I use an app called Obsidian. And it's a free app that you can download. I use it on my Mac. I know people in Linux use something like Cherry Tree, and this looks really complicated, but it's just kind of the power of this note-taking app. And so I have a start point when I start to look for someone online. So I Google their name and I use certain Google operators, and I put that in my Obsidian notes, and I just say what I do. So if for some reason I'm tired or I'm on my fourth case of the day, then I can go to that notes and look at what I've done before and go, oh yes, I can look up a username. So when you kind of come to what you think might be a dead end, you can look at what you've done before and had success in before, or just jog your memory. Oh, I could check their phone number or their email in Skype, things like that. So make sure you take notes of what you do, and then it becomes a replicable. I'm doing what Mike does now. You can replicate it, and it's a process. You have your own processes as an investigator. I sit here, this is the exact office I work in, and it's my own business. I operate under an ABN. Nobody else is handing these things over to me. So I have to have my own processes, and I have to write them down because it makes life easier for me. I can't just rely on just up here. So that is the Obsidian app. Again, it's free, it's fantastic. And if you ever are thinking that you are stuck and you've checked your own notes and you're really not sure what to do, where you can pivot to next, there is a great website which I actually didn't manage to get the website address in there, but it's the Ultimate OSINT Collection. And if you email me, Mike will put my email down the bottom, please, Mike, and just say, what's the Ultimate OSINT Collection website? And I'll just email you the website. So it has some fantastic things there. And I actually hadn't have checked it in a while. And as you can see there on the left, there is an advanced OSINT, the art of pivoting. And I was like, fantastic, because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. So I can highly recommend a read of that because it's fantastic. There is no one answer when it comes to finding someone online. Even if you think that this person has never made the news or not going to have any kind of online presence, people do, and you'll be surprised what people can make the local newsletter for that just happens to be online. I found someone through, this was a couple of years ago now, but growing tulips, and she was in her 80s and she grew tulips and entered them into a local show, and that little newsletter made it online. And so there was evidence of her online in a certain area. So always check, even if you think they're not going to be there. So, and pivot. Like, just keep that in mind. And also, I wanted to put out there, because I don't know how many Michael Bazell fans there are on here, but he teaches people, he has a list for Americans of how to disappear online. So what websites they can go to ask them to remove their information. And because even though I'm an OSINT professional, on the flip side, I love security and privacy. So I was putting together an Australian list of who we can ask to remove our information to stop ourselves being doxxed. And if you would like that document when I'm finished, or if you know of a website as well that you find information like Zoom info, there are just random ones that pop up all the time. But I'm mainly concentrating on the big one. But if you would like that or have any suggestions of what I can add to that list, that would be fantastic, because that's the thing about being Australian, is that there are heaps of American references and lists that we can look at, but not really Australian ones. And I'd like to make one specific for us. So it would be really good for CEOs of different companies, even just for things for us to look at when looking for people or removing our own information, so that's not leaked online. People like policemen or correctional services officers who really should not have an online presence if they're in a difficult situation. So all that kind of thing, I think it would be a fantastic resource for us to have. So make sure you email me, ask me for the ultimate OSINT collection guide, and also the list that I'm putting together. So let me know what you guys think about that.
Chris is interested in that one, Casey, so you've got a starter already, and I'm sure Chris has got something he can add to your list as well. So thanks, Chris, really appreciate that. Good to see you, Jamie. Good to see you, Renee. Sorry, I've been a bit slack saying acknowledging your presence today.
Yeah, hello, everybody.
Oh, boy. I'm coming up with recording conversations is coming up very soon, but this one's happened this week and it came up on Facebook. So I've never heard of Amber Heard. I don't know what book she wrote or poetry or whatever. I have no idea, but she's arguing in court with Johnny Depp, who was Edward Scissorhands or something. I got no idea what they do. But anyway, we've got a body language expert on Facebook now. This guy is stylish. He's well-dressed and he sounds like Andy Bloody Chambers. But have a look at what he says and what she does in court, and we'll try and practice it afterwards. If you're looking for Casey's sheet she just spoke about, there's her email address below, and just contact her and say, hey, Casey, I'm interested in the development sheet you suggested. When you finished it, can you flick it down to me? Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Have a look at this.
Sensitive topic as well. Remember here on the Believe in Bruce channel, it's about being fair and balanced. I'm not in Amber Heard's camp. I'm not in Johnny Depp's camp. All I'm doing is I'm going to present my findings on this bit of video that I've been analysing in a fair and balanced way. So let's get into it. The first bit of body language here, which is actually really hard to do, is Amber Heard is asked by the interviewer who's running the deposition, the person who's asking the questions, that, do you understand what I'm saying? You know, are you in tune with me? And Amber Heard does something really, now this is right at the beginning, she does something really interesting, is she actually nods her head and says no.
Understand what I'm asking you? No.
Try and do it.
Yes. No.
Yes. No. Go and give it a practice at home. We can't see you. Amber Heard can do it, I guess. It's a place when you're in that witness box, and you can get confused sometimes. But oh boy, I've never done the yes. No. No. I haven't done that in 35 presentations that I'm aware of. How stylish was that guy, Casey? Wasn't he just?
Yeah, I quite liked his bow tie.
Yeah, we see bow ties detect lies, and that's why Casey and I are wearing our bow ties in relation to that. Probably one of the most popular things we have ever done on SpyCurious, over 146 episodes, people, and you are watching episode 146, is Casey's OSINT tips, as you just saw then. We have a list that builds every week with Casey's latest tip on it, and if you write to me, I will send it to you if you request it. So you've heard me bang on here and crap on about accidents for 20 minutes, and then Casey just gave you a really good 4-minute quick tip in relation to OSINT and persistence and what happens, and not to be disappointed with databases and, you know, how you can combine other things with it and do it. And she did that in 3 minutes. We've added that to the list. And if you want it, and you don't want to watch my bad jokes about accidents with kickbacks from angle grinders and stuff like that, you can just request that and I will send it to you. So that's really important. If you've had trouble getting through to me, I have been away, and catching up after being away for 2 weeks is very difficult. I will get to you. I do apologise for the delay. It comes around very quickly each week. But take advantage of Casey's tips there in relation to that. So let's have a look at recording conversations. Can you do it? And this is specifically in Victoria because Nathan Buckley and Herdia Lambana have been arguing about a recorded conversation that was chucked on Twitter this week. Now, Nathan gave the exact right response. He said, oh, yeah, I'd love to discuss it. If you put the uncut version up there, you know, that just sows dissent and all that sort of thing. So, you know, that's what he did. He immediately responded with that. But can that person record that private conversation and whack it up on Twitter, YouTube, or anywhere else? Let's have a look.
The legislation in Victoria that regulates surveillance devices is the Surveillance Devices Act 1999. Again, we'll go back to that definition. A listening device, like we did with the Invasion of Privacy Act in Queensland, means any device, again, can be the glass against the wall, capable of being used to overhear, record, monitor or listen to a private conversation or words spoken to or by any person in a private conversation, but it doesn't include a hearing aid. Now, the hearing aid situation means it's something to enhance audio for someone who's got impaired hearing, where the voices that they're actually using to enhance via the hearing aid can be heard by the normal, natural ear of a person who's got good hearing, and all they're doing is amplifying that because they have a hearing impairment. So it doesn't include a hearing aid. Again, private conversation, exactly the same as Queensland. Means conversation carried on in circumstances that may reasonably be taken to indicate that the parties to it desire it to be heard only by themselves, so that reasonable expectation of privacy, as I said before. Does not include a conversation made in any circumstances in which the parties to it ought reasonably expect that it may be overheard by someone else. So the cafe, standing next to someone at the football. If you're standing next to them and you can hear them talking by just standing there in a public place that's publicly accessible, not a problem, not a problem, even though you're not a part of that conversation. So the offence section, same thing as Queensland. A person must not knowingly install, use or maintain a listening device to overhear, record, monitor or listen to a private conversation to which the person is not a party without the express or implied consent of each party to the conversation. Now, there's a word there in the second line, start of the second line, maintain a listening device. The Surveillance Devices Act in 1999. That was created by the area where I used to work in Melbourne, where we only had listening device legislation back then, and we had cameras that we wanted to install. We had tracking devices that we used. There was no provision to have warrants for those. It was always a grey area. It was never tested in court. We always shuddered thinking, I hope we're not going to be the test case where case law is, you know, determined as the result of something we've done on a really important case that we were working on. So the maintain listening device, there was always a problem where we had warrant periods for 3 weeks. That's it, full stop. And you had to get the listening device out within that 3-week period. So if you had troubles getting the person away from their house or getting access to the premises where the device was installed, you had a definite milestone where you had to get that device out by the date. Now, back prior to this, the regulation of listening devices was that extreme that we used to have to fill out a listening device register. The register had every detail about when it was installed, who installed it, who was present, all the people named on the warrant, when it was installed, when it was removed, and we had to sign off this listening device register every occasion we used a listening device. that register used to get tabled to state parliament. It was that serious back then. So that was the maintaining thing. So they brought in a situation where we could get extensions on our warrant to get it out if we couldn't get access to the premises. So that's where that came from. Okay, what does it mean? Same thing. You can use a listening device to record a private conversation that he or she is a party to. Doesn't include placing a listening device, as I said before. Same thing. Be careful with what you do afterwards. Can't communicate or publish a record or report. Person must not knowingly communicate or publish a record or report of a private conversation that has been made as a direct or indirect result of using a listening device. I'll just extend on this. Listening devices in Victoria are managed under the Surveillance Devices Act, as are optical surveillance devices. So cameras, video cameras, they're actually regulated in exactly the same way as listening devices. So where you have a private conversation, in respect to video cameras, it's a private activity. So it's exactly the same. If you swap and change private activity to private conversation, exactly the same. Now, you remember that girl that had the affair with Ricky Nixon from the St Kilda Football Club? Where she committed the offence was, she was quite entitled to record the video inside the motel room. The moment she posted it online on her Facebook and social media, that's where she committed the offence by communicate or publish. Same thing with the video. I'll come back to video at the end as well. Again, we've got exemptions. Section 11(2), subsection A, doesn't apply to a communication or publication made with the express or implied consent of each party to the private conversation. Again, if you're going to have that consent, record the consent. Record the person giving you consent. Again, in Victoria, very similar to Queensland, doesn't apply to a communication or publication that is no more than reasonably necessary in the public interest. Journalists, again, for the protection of the lawful interests of the person making it, exactly the same as Queensland, so there's no issue with that. Doesn't apply, this is section 11(2)(c), to a communication or publication in the course of legal proceedings or disciplinary proceedings. So it extends, the Victorian legislation extends to the point where it covers HR people. So in Victoria, HR people can share those recordings in amongst, you know, other HR people in the area where they work or within the industry directly involved with the investigation.
You're muted, Mike. Your mic is muted, Mike.
Thanks, Casey. As I always say, I never met a mic I didn't like, and I'll just turn it back on. So that's Victoria, and Pat's just explained about recording conversations there. So where this one that's come out this week, the Collingwood Football Club's got itself into strife, is it's been published up on Twitter, allegedly. So I don't know. I mean, there's a whole lot of examples there. Ricky Nixon and the St Kilda schoolgirl, and then you've got the guy that owns the car repair company, and recording conversations is going on all over the place. So they are the issues with it. Now, there is a piece of legislation for an investigator that you get out of jail free card. If you want to find out what that is, and the New South Wales legislation and the Queensland legislation and pretty well everywhere else, go and watch the full video on YouTube. Scroll down to SpyCurious, episode number 99. It's got the black and red tartan bow tie in it. It goes for 46 minutes, 46 seconds, and it's episode 99. So you can see the whole thing and watch the replay of the master in his element at this sort of thing, Patrick Flynn, who is an authority on legal recordings. And he'll give you examples of when private investigators actually record things. And he gives you an example of two private investigators, how they recorded something and why it was important. Okay, they were parties to the conversation and they could do it. So go onto our YouTube channel, just type in Michael Evans, Australian Security Academy YouTube, scroll down to number 99, watch the full program. We're about private investigators in civil investigation, not police investigation. When you go and watch those things on YouTube, you're learning what's relevant to you being a licensed private investigator. That's it. And that's what's important, because you don't want to cross the line or bend the rules, as we discussed last week. And each week now I'm going to have a little thing. Last week it was no bending of the rules. This week it's all black and white. So what Pat Flynn tells you is black and white. It's the Collingwood Football Club got an issue with recording conversations this week. It's black and white. Last week, no bending of the rules. This week, what we do as investigators, people, is black and white, just like the Collingwood Football Club, okay? One of the things that's happened this week, I better do some more jobs before I've got a few more jobs. I've got a Clarity Investigations down in Melbourne looking for a case manager. So that's an office-based position. You'll be coordinating the investigators. So great opportunity with Clarity. Factual investigator is required by G. Hughes and Associates in Brisbane. Great people at G. Hughes and Associates in Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne and Hobart. Hi, everyone at G. Hughes. I know you watch each week. Great. Thank you for your support. A lot of great members there. Fraud and Corruption Manager for Transport New South Wales. What a great opportunity. Now, people say to me, well, what do you do as a Fraud and Corruption Manager at Transport New South Wales? What are you going to do? Well, we had a great one several years ago where there was a big tender issued by Transport New South Wales. It was worth millions of dollars. And one of the tenderers decided that they would provide a complete day of activities and action, including going to a local theme park and free drinks and free meals for all the employees of Transport New South Wales. And they went. And while they were doing that, the fraud squad at Transport New South Wales had hired a bunch of licensed private investigators to conduct surveillance on all their employees at it and the organisation that was doing it. So they had a record of it. They all lost their job. That entity that tried to influence, bribe, get a kickback or whatever from Transport New South Wales can never, ever tender for their work again. So there is a lot of big money in Transport New South Wales for road repairs, railways, airports, that sort of thing. It's big stakes. So if you're a fraud manager in there, you've got a great job. And you'll need a diploma of government investigation at least. And another one there, Transport New South Wales, LKA down in Melbourne are looking for a factual investigator. You'll be interviewed by Monica Smith. You get over the line with that one, you'll really know your stuff. Great to see Monica at LKA, and that's what Casey was doing earlier. So there's some of the jobs, people, but what's come out this week that people have been contacting me and being concerned about is a news article appearing on the ABC website. Now, anytime you have a private investigator hitting the headlines, it's sensational. And in this case, we've got Alan Davey. Now, Alan's got himself a gig working for Vic Forests. And what he used to do, you can see on the ABC website. There's a video about it, okay? And it's just type in ABC and look at Alan Davey, and it'll come up Vic Forests accused of spying on protesters. Okay, and Alan's there dramatically setting up some cameras and wandering through the bush and stuff like that to add a little bit of theatre to the ABC story. I guess it's just like wearing a bow tie and braces. It just gives it a bit of dramatic theatre. So anyway, his major work there was monitoring log trucks and their speed and reporting back to Vic Forests how these people were behaving on the road. And it went on for quite a while. So he'd be invoicing them $8,000, $2,000, $3,000. Who cares? He was doing his job. Now, from a public interest point of view, he's made the road safer for you and me and our children and our relatives and our friends and our neighbours and other road users by reporting what he was supposed to do, yahooing in fully laden and empty log trucks on the road. So that was what his contract was to do. And then along came, after the bushfires, the big bushfires down there, some protesters, and he was asked to do 4 days of surveillance on a particular protester. Now, this is not unusual. At inner city protests, you don't know it, but you will have undercover investigators, undercover police, undercover everything, monitoring certain people in crowds. That's the way it's always been. All years I've been an investigator. It happens. They're hired to do it. That's their role. Doesn't mean these people are armed and dangerous or they're insightful or whatever. They might be being watched for their own safety. Who knows? But it happens, okay? And it doesn't make you a Nazi state or any nanny state or anything like that. It just happens. Now, he did surveillance on a particular protester for 4 days. That was it. What do you think hit the headlines? His good work in the log truck monitoring or the 4 days of the protester? Okay, so the 4 days of the protester, she's been violated, she's been watched and blah, blah, blah. And Alan goes through it. Now, in the process of all this and along the way afterwards, Alan gets trapped in the bush by some multiple assailants and cops are hiding. So... So people say to me, well, hang on, this is not good for private investigators. Right? They're running around watching protesters and government departments and they're getting bashed up and all that sort of thing. If you cop a hiding from 4 or more people when you're undercover on surveillance, you didn't just walk into it. You have to escalate it, up the ante and piss them off. So if you haven't got the de-escalation techniques and the ability to confuse, right, and divide people who are intent on doing something to you, you shouldn't be doing the job. So Alan cops it, a pretty severe hiding from 4 people. Now, he wasn't ambushed. We don't know because we're lacking detail because confidentiality agreements were signed. And he really gets knocked about. So he sues Vic Forrest and gets a private payout in relation to it. So we don't know who the assailants were, and it's suggested that they were growing dope. Now, when you're on surveillance, you will, in the bush and rural environment, accidentally come across dope plantations. And people say to me, well, you should really do your citizen's duty and pick it all and smoke it, right? But no, you don't do that, right? Because what happens is there's 2 situations. One, the person who you are watching will be fencing or they'll be driving a tractor or they'll be ploughing or they'll be whatever they're doing. And you're trying to keep your outline hidden so you don't stand out from the trees and that sort of thing, and you're basically crawling on your hands and knees through the bush watching the person who you are videoing. That's what you're doing. You're not looking at where you're going. You might see some power lines or another fence or some Scotch thistles or some blackberries or whatever. You work your way, but you're constantly watching the person and you end up in a dope plantation. Now, the first you become aware of that is you smell it. That's your first indication. Now, in some places, there'll be large carrots half eaten around it. That's where they put poison 1080 to poison the wombats, possums and wallabies and kangaroos that are eating their dope crop. That's your first warning. That should really alert you. But not all cases do they do that. Sometimes they're caged and sometimes they're just there, right? So you smell it first. And by the time you've smelt it, you realise you're in it. Now, these things are booby-trapped. They have cameras in them, right? If you get in there, your priority is to get out backwards exactly the way you went in, because they put fish hooks on tripwires, large shark fish hooks, shotguns on tripwires, Because there's a lot of criminals out there trying to steal other criminals' dope plants. So they're trying, it's a deterrent, that's what they do. In one case, there was one investigator, he was near one, he knew it was there, it was 50 metres away, but each afternoon, the two people he wasn't watching would come out of the shed and blast randomly around the hills with shotguns, and he'd have tree branches falling down on top of him. They didn't know he was there, but they were doing it to deter other criminals or police who might have been watching their dope plantation. So that's one instance where you would be doing that. Now, Alan didn't walk into that. He didn't. It's speculation there might have been a dope plantation there, right? But he didn't walk into it. We have no evidence of that. The other time, you'll be out in the bush and you'll be driving along and you've had a very busy day. You've been drinking lots of water and you need to go to the toilet. So you pull up randomly on the side of the road. There's no other cars anywhere, and you walk into the bush 2 metres just to relieve yourself out of the sight of any truck or car that might come along on a dirt road in a deserted bush. And that's where you walk into dope plants all the time. And they're usually caged. And it's pretty scary because you instantly go into who is watching, where are the booby traps. It's just a normal reaction. Now, Alan didn't do that, okay? He didn't say that. So he's come across 4 or more people that have given him a severe hiding. And I don't care how angelic you want to play yourself out to be. If you piss people off with your words or your actions, you can't complain about the hiding you get at the end of it, right? So you're an investigator, you leave. But if you want to see that documentary, it's really hyped up about, 4-day surveillance on this lady, all these invoices, 8 grand, 10 grand, whatever. Yeah, they were when he was following log trucks and doing other stuff. I don't know. Alan's still a licensed private investigator. I couldn't tell you that. But, have a look at it for your own interests. So that's part of the news this week, and I've gone way, way over time. I've covered all the jobs, covered all the information. Congratulations, Annette Bury. Looking forward to seeing you, Dr. Michael King, next week. Play episode 99 on the Australian Security Academy YouTube page and see Pat's full Recording Conversations program. And I think I've covered everything. I really have. I've covered everything. Yep, that looks like it. So, people, I guess all we can do now is see you next secret week. But we'll go out in the usual way.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That's how every private investigation agency in Australia finishes their week. And as you just saw earlier and heard earlier today, SpyCurious every Friday now is going to have a weekly theme. Last week it is No Bendable Rules, brought to us by John at Precise Investigation. Very grateful for that, John. You're a champion. This week, what we do is controlled by a process, policy, procedure, act or regulation. It's black and it's white. There are no 50 shades of grey in being a licensed private investigator. You can't use the methods of the Ways and Means Act in the New South Wales detective system. You can only be straight as a licensed private investigator. That's the expectation of QBE, of UE, of AMP, of Zurich, of WorkSafe, of the TAC, of the MAIB, and all the other clients who employ licensed private investigators. So see you next week, people. And thanks, Casey. Really appreciate your tip.
You're welcome. See everyone next week. Thank you for watching.
I'm sure you're going to go home now and enjoy the rest of the rain. We're here in Queensland. It's one day pissing down, and the next day it's absolutely pouring down. So see you next week, people. Thanks for watching.
Bye.